Welcome, guys. I'm Dr. Darrah, and this is the Beyond the Bellyache workshop. We're going to go through everything you need to know, everything from analyzing your poop to fixing your digestive issues, what foods to eat, what foods not to eat, what supplements to take if that's your thing, natural solutions compared to what current society does, and what the side effects of those are. So I'm going to try to keep this as short as possible. Um, See, if there's something that I say that you don't quite understand, just text or email the office, or when you come by, and ask for the handouts if you were not at the workshop. We're doing this workshop actually tonight, so I'm pre-recording everything this afternoon for the people that cannot come. And so hopefully you're here tonight. If not, this is we missed you, and this is your easy way to get the information when I happen to show up. So let's get started with this. All right. Let's see here. All right. So our amazing digestive system. To lay a groundwork, your digestive system starts in your mouth and goes all the way down to your anus. All right. It's so that big tube that goes all the way through, including your intestines and large intestines and colon and everything else. And there's actually three organs that are solid organs that are part of your digestive system. That is your liver. And its job is to actually make bile, and bile is what the body uses to break down the fat that you eat. Your second solid organ, this part of your digestive system is your gallbladder. The gallbladder's job is to secrete that bile that your liver makes into your gut to break down the bile. And then the third part of your digestive system is actually your pancreas. Its job is to make the enzymes to break the food down, help regulate your blood sugar and whatnot. So anytime there's an issue with that giant tube that comes down through, or any of those three organs, you can have digestive failures or digestive issues and symptoms. And then you run to the doctor, they give you a bunch of medications, antibiotics, pills, over the counter, whatever the case is, and then there's side effects of those. So our point of this presentation is to show you how to fix all that stuff naturally without having to run to your doctor every time. All right. One thing I do want to talk about is the gallbladder before we move on. The gallbladder is probably the most common organ removed from the human body. I believe God put it there for a purpose. It's there to help regulate and secrete the bile into your digestive system. Yes, your liver makes bile, so when you take your gallbladder out, you can still break down fats. It's just not as efficiently. So the liver makes the bile, puts it in the gallbladder, which is if you will, the valve, and it secretes how much bile your body needs at the right time when you eat certain fats. If you don't have that gallbladder, then the liver's just dumping bile into your gut at uncontrolled proportions sometimes, so it doesn't break down those fats as efficient. That's why you should do everything you can to keep your gallbladder. If you no longer have a gallbladder, I'm not judging. Just understand there's a purpose for that. And so if you don't have a gallbladder, it's going to be a little tricky trying to break down the fats in your body. So what ends up happening is your body stores those fats because it doesn't break them down. And so that's why when you have no gallbladder, over time, you put lots of belly fat on because your body's just storing that fat it cannot break down efficiently because you have no gallbladder. So those are the three organs, and that's what the digestive system is made of. So moving on, inside all of that is what we call the microbiome. The microbiome is just the environment, if you will, in your digestive system. It's made of like hundreds of billions of bacteria, viruses, fungi, a number, yeast, all these different things. Your body is made up is what's called the microbiome. And anytime that's a perfect balance in there. And anytime part of that gets off, too much or too little good or bad bacteria, too much yeast, too much fungal growth, all these different things, then your microbiome gets out of place and you starts wreaking havoc on your body. You also learn that 70% of your immune system is actually housed in your gut as well. So it's very important that this microbiome right here actually stays conducive to what you need. And we're all uniquely different because when it gets out, that affects your digestive system, obviously. It affects your immunity because 70% of your body's immune system is in the gut. And so that makes you more susceptible to sickness, viruses, and diseases, especially if you're somebody that takes antibiotics all the time because they wreak havoc on everything, not just the bad bacteria. So we'll talk more about those in a little bit, right? So again, the good bacteria is what most people focus on when it comes to their gut health, which we call probiotics. That's the buzzword. Everybody takes probiotics. Probiotics are simply just the good bacteria in your gut, and they need prebiotics to actually feed those probiotics. And I believe we'll get into this a little bit later on, but basically the difference between pre and probiotics is this. Prebiotics are the food for probiotics. Probiotics are your live cultures that you take. Those, you're going to get live culture. Think of a probiotic as something that's alive. So we're talking, you're getting that from yogurt, sauerkraut, kefir, all these things that we think that are fermented foods and pickled foods. You get all your good probiotics from those things. But probiotics need prebiotics to thrive. Prebiotics are actually what actual fruit fiber from fruit and vegetables. So a good example of a prebiotic would be fiber from fruit and vegetables. That's why eating things like pickled carrots, sauerkraut, all these different things that currently there are vegetables that have fiber in them already. That's why they're superior to taking just plain probiotics, because you're getting the prebiotics from the fiber from the vegetable, right? The pickled whatever, pickled, you can pickle anything these days, right? So you're getting prebiotics from the fermented vegetables, and you're also getting the probiotics from the fermentation of that vegetable. So that's why those are more superior than just taking probiotics. So that's the difference between pre and probiotics. And you can get too much probiotics, believe it or not, and that'll cause another problem we'll talk about. So just because you have a ton of good bacteria doesn't mean that's a good thing. You got to keep that balance, all right? So that's bacteria. One thing that's important to understand as we get into the gut health is this gut-brain connection. You have like 100 billion neurons in your brain and like 500 billion neurons in your stomach. Now, the brain in the stomach is called the gut-brain connection. They actually communicate back and forth. So the gut affects the brain and the brain affects the gut. To point this out as an example, anytime you get butterflies in your stomach when you're nervous about, say, had to prep for this presentation, right? When I first started, I was nervous. So that's my brain telling my gut, and I could feel that in my gut, those butterflies. So that's the gut-brain connection. That's why it's so important to actually have good gut health, because that can actually affect your brain, right? People with anxiety, depression, all the dementia, we'll relate dementia back to your gut health, believe it or not. So people with anxiety and depression a lot of times have bad gut health. So normally when you get stressed from something from your past, which is depression, or something from the future, which is anxiety, something's going to happen. Those are the differences there. Typically when your brain says, hey, you know what, I'm worried about this event, so we need to, or this past event or this current event, so my gut has to make what's called serotonin. Serotonin is then absorbed in the gut, goes through those neurons to the brain, and it calms your brain out. So serotonin is the hormone that makes you calm and collective, keeps you from getting bad anxiety or suffering from depression. When we get depression or anxiety, the first thing we do is when we go to our doctor, they give us a prescription that makes our brain think it's got enough serotonin, or they give us artificial serotonin, and that's how that works. But there's side effects. Something simply what you can do is fix your gut. And if you fix your gut, your serotonin levels are properly, so you don't have those anxiety, depression thoughts as much, because serotonin is what helps regulate those in your brain. If your gut is off, then it's going to make your brain off, and you're going to be more susceptible to those past memories or those future worries, right? There was actually a really cool study on this done. I was actually prepping for this workshop last week, and I came home for lunch, and my wife Stacy was sitting there, and she was watching this documentary, and it was about poop transplants. And listen to this, it sounds crazy, but it's a thing. You can literally take your stool, all right, and send it to this company, and they'll put it in capsule forms in the form of like pills, like supplements, and send it back to you. And so the documentary was about, it was showing that gut-brain connection. And when you take samples of your stool, it has certain bacteria, certain funguses, certain yeast, all those things that are in your diet, in your life, okay? It has all that in your stool, because the stool is the waste coming from your body. And so the study was showing the lady's boyfriend did not have anxiety, depression, or anything, right? But she had severe anxiety, depression. So the study was trying to communicate this gut-brain connection. So they took the boyfriend's stool, put it in a pill form, sent it back to her. She has anxiety, depression. She started taking his stool pills. This is what the poop transplant is. This is a legit thing. Look it up, poop transplants. There's a whole There's a whole study on it. She started taking his poop pills, if you will, and literally within like 2 or 3 months, she had no anxiety or depression, because what she was doing, taking his stool samples, is she was putting the proper bacteria and all those organisms into her gut, replenishing her gut. Therefore, the brain could now absorb the serotonin or the dopamine, the feel-good hormone, all these different things when you get excited, all these different things to regulate her digestive system with his digestive system, and then her depression, anxiety went away. And this was this huge study, and they even turned around and went back and said, hey, you know what, let's try it the other way. So they took somebody that had no depression, anxiety, gave stool from a person that had depression, anxiety, and within 3 months, that person with no depression, anxiety now suffered from depression and anxiety, because it was all about the bacteria in the stool. So pretty amazing stuff. I know it sounds gross. I don't want to eat anybody's poop, but basically that was the thing. Right? It was a pretty cool study to see that gut-brain connection. But so it's very important that you have good gut health is the bottom line of that. All right. So moving on, your gut health and immune system. I talked about how 70% of your gut health is actually, 70% of your immune system is actually housed in your gut. So it's very, very important that you have the good right amount of bacteria, of viruses. I know we think of viruses as bad things, but your gut does need some good virus in there as well. So we'll talk more about that later. But another reason to have good gut health is because of your immune system. If you take too many antibiotics all the time, it actually, look at it like it's bombing the city there, and it destroys your gut good bacteria as the bad bacteria, which we'll talk about shortly. And therefore you become sicker. This is why sick kids get sicker every time they go to the doctor. They start taking the antibiotics this time of year. This is the fall when I record this. Your kids or your grandkids stay in the doctor's office all this time of year, or maybe you do as well, because we take so many antibiotics, it's actually killing our immune system as well. So we'll get in more detail, about that later. All right. So Hippocrates, he was quoted as saying, all diseases begin in the gut, which is back what I talked about, that gut-brain barrier. So it's important that you have good gut health, not just because you want a flat stomach for your bathing suit, guys, just because it's simply your health is your gut, right? So symptoms of poor gut health. These are going to be things like something as mild as indigestion, burping, gas, bloating, bathroom issues. You don't go to the bathroom but maybe once a week or two, which is not good. You should be pooping at least 1 time per day as a minimum. If you're not, you're developing problems, which can develop into colon cancer down the road. So make sure you're pooping at least once a day, sometimes 3. You eat 3 times a day, you should poop 3 times a day. Just think about it, right? What goes in must come out. So we'll talk about poop here in a second. But so symptoms of poor gut health lead to other things. So don't just pop a pill to get rid of the symptom. Understand there's a more underlying condition. So those are some basic symptoms. Now let's look at some common digestive orders in order of severity, from starting to nothing to something more severe, right? The first one, something really common, is acid reflux, right? We've all probably experienced acid reflux. That's when you get the indigestion. It feels like something's burning in your chest or up in your throat. You feel like that acid's coming up, that reflux, if you will. And when you get acid reflux, the first thing we do is we turn to anti-acid pills or Pepto-Bismol. We take all these, Tums, all these over-the-counter things, which actually do more harm than good, which we'll talk about in a second. But basically, all acid reflux is you have a valve. You have a valve right here, right down here where your stomach, when you eat food, that valve opens up, food goes down into your stomach, is digested in the acidic environment, and then that valve closes back up once there's no more food going down the tube, down your esophagus. What acid reflux is when that valve does not close all the way up, therefore the acid comes back out that valve because the valve is not closed off enough. And so if the valve is not closing off, the acid is coming up through the valve, causing indigestion or acid reflux. So what we do is we take an antacid to cover that down, but it never fixes the valve issue, right? So you're not deficient in a Tums or antacid when you have acid reflux. The problem is your valve is not closing off, right? And it's not closing off because you have a bad microbiome. This is the beginning phases of something more severe. So that's the basic thing, acid reflux, when it comes to gut health. A quick note, this is really cool. We see patients for this all the time. That valve, or sphincter as they call it, between your esophagus and your stomach that opens and closes your food to go in, it's actually controlled by what's called the vagus nerve. And this is where I get excited when it comes to what I do in chiropractic, because not only does chiropractic help you with your aches and pains when we adjust you, but every single one of those nerves in your brain that go down through your spinal cord out through those nerves, they control every cell, muscle, organ, tissue in your body, including that valve. And so if there's pressure on the vagus nerve, which is up here at the top, then that valve is not going to open and close like it should. And so a lot of times people will come to us with digestive issues. We start adjusting the upper cervical, and guess what happens? No more acid reflux, because that valve actually closes off like it's supposed to, the way the Lord designed it. And so sometimes you just need a good adjustment in the upper cervical area to get rid of acid reflux. You don't need to take an over-the-counter pill or Tums every day for that. Just ask myself or Dr. Alex, and we can adjust your upper cervical, and the acid reflux typically goes away pretty quickly, because we just fix what's causing that valve not to close off, which was a decrease in interference or increase in interference between the brain, the vagus nerve, and the sphincter that opens and closes that causes acid reflux, right? So pretty cool stuff there. So basics, acid reflux. Then if you ignore that for too long, we get to this condition called SIBO or SIBO or SIBO, wherever you come from. It's basically, SIBO stands for small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. So this is when you have too much bacteria, good or bad, in your small intestines. The small intestines is the part of your digestive system that is right past your stomach. So you have your mouth, your esophagus, your stomach, then the small intestines. So the small intestines, if you have too much good or bad bacteria in there, we call this SIBO or SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. And this can wreak havoc on everything, because when you ignore SIBO for a long time, it actually turns into the next condition, which we call leaky gut. So it's best to address SIBO in the beginning so you don't develop to this next current level of leaky gut. The way you address SIBO is actually getting rid of, let me see if I go back here. It's not gonna let me. The way you address SIBO is actually by putting either good bacteria in there or taking a supplement that gets rid of the bad bacteria and then putting the good bacteria in, which we'll get to how to do that with supplements later on down the road. But SIBO unchecked goes to leaky gut. Leaky gut is something we see all the time in Max Living. This is basically just how it sounds. When you eat food, it is leaking through your gut lining into your bloodstream. All right, that's what leaky gut is. It's exactly what it sounds like. And that, yes, that's the thing. Your gut, when laid out, has 4,000 square feet of space in it. That's the surface area of your small and large intestines is 4,000 square feet, which is the size of two tennis courts. All right, 4,000 square feet is the size of 2 tennis courts. And that's the surface area or the absorption area or the internal lining of both your small and large intestines. And so if you have too much inflammation from SIBO getting too bad, or you're eating a poor diet over time, you start to get so much inflammation that these holes start to break out in your gut lining. And literally they become small holes. And what happens is the food that you eat, when it's broken down, it seeps through the gut lining into the bloodstream, which is called leaky gut. When those food particles actually get into the bloodstream, your body says, oh no, this is not right. Something's wrong. It sends cells, like macrophages and all these cells that eat things and attack things to that area, and it starts eating those, but then it attacks itself. This is what we call an autoimmune disease. So most autoimmune diseases actually start from having a leaky gut. When the food leaks out, the body says this is not normal. It comes and attacks those cells. It comes and attacks that food that's leaking into the bloodstream, as it should. And therefore now it turns on itself, and it's called an autoimmune disease. And then it expresses itself. A lot of times in women, it's thyroid disease. It could be skin issues, eczema, things like that. It could be, hyper or hypothyroid disease. It could be bloating. It could be, a number of different things. But a simple autoimmune disease is caused 90% of the time because of a leaky gut that went unchecked, all right? Unless you have a bad gene or something like that. And so you always want to fix a leaky gut. So by fixing a leaky gut, 9 times out of 10, you can reverse your autoimmune disease as well, or at least it goes into remission. So you don't have to take medicine for that all the time. So leaky gut's a big thing. And we actually, in some of our food testing that we do here in the clinic through our FIT22 test, it will actually tell us how severe that is and if you actually have a leaky gut. So we can actually test food sensitivities, and it will tell us if you have a leaky gut or not. That's something we do with our Fit 22 testing. If you want to learn more about that, just ask the girls at the front desk, and they can talk about that gut testing we do for that. Well, actually, it checks the foods that you're allergic to, and if you certain foods are allergic to, if there's too high, that it means you have a leaky gut. So, but that's leaky gut. Leaky gut unchecked goes into UC or ulcerative colitis. Ulcerative colitis and Crohn's are very similar. These are the two big ones that plague people for half their lives, if not their whole lives. And basically, they're very common. They both cause severe inflammation. They affect different parts of the body. So this chart here is really good if you have UC or Crohn's or not sure which one you have. This is a good comparison. As you see, this ulcerative colitis, it affects mainly the colon, which is your large intestines, and your anus or your rectum, where your poop comes out, right? Crohn's disease, on the other hand, on the other side of the screen, it can affect everything from your mouth all the way down to your stomach, your digestive, your small intestine, your large intestine, and your anus. And so that's the big difference. Is one, ulcerative colitis is mainly your large intestines or your colon, and Crohn's disease can happen from the mouth all the way down to the bottom, right? And it causes severe inflammation. Ulcerative colitis is not that Crohn's doesn't have this, but ulcerative colitis tends to have lots of bleeding, bloody stools. Because think of ulcers all in your gut lining that bleed when they're rubbed from waste coming through here. So you're going to see lots of bloody stools and flare-ups from ulcerative colitis versus Crohn's disease. Typically, treatments for both of these things, there's prescription medications that work by sort of suppressing your immune system so it doesn't attack itself. Lots of gut things, but there's so many side effects of those medications. I don't recommend them. This large and small intestines, they're controlled by the vagus nerve as well. And while I can't say it's a common thing, I've actually seen and heard of patients reverse Crohn's disease when they started going to a chiropractor, simply taking pressure off the vagus nerve again that regulates your digestive system. So I'm not saying that's going to happen every time. Over my last 15 years of doing this, I've noticed a lot of patients with UC or Crohn's go into remission when they started getting adjustments. Best thing to treat this stuff is the proper diet, which we'll talk about here in a second, all right? But these are your extreme things when it comes to your gut health. If you ignore if you ignore the indigestion or the acid reflux too long, if you then start ignoring, the SIBO or the leaky gut, then it develops into these more serious problems, right? So what goes in must come out. Simple as that. When you eat 3 times a day, you should poop 3 times a day. If you eat once a day, you're going to poop once a day, right? People that do not poop on a regular basis are setting themselves up for severe problems when they get older. Number one being pancreatic cancer, which is 9% death, or colon cancer, which they take part of your colon out and you wear a poop bag the rest of your life, right? So do something about this now before it gets too bad. What comes in must comes out. So speaking of that, we're going to talk about your poop, all right? There's different types of poop. I remember back when Oprah was popular, decades ago, I was reading an article one time and it said her #1 rated show of all time was when she had a gastro guy on there and he talked about different poops and he gave different examples of poop. And that was her #1 rated show of all time. Pretty crazy. So you got 7 different types of poop. Type 1, think of it like nuts coming out that are just loose. So look like berries. So that's type 1. Separate hard lumps, they look like nuts and they're hard to pass and they sort of just fall out, right? Type 2 is more sausage shaped but lumpy, like a bunch of nuts clumped together. Type 3 is more sausage-like, but it does have cracks in it. Type 4 is like a long, lean sausage or a snake. Type 5 is like soft blobs with clear-cut edges that just sort of comes out really easy. Type 6 is that when you look at your poop and it's fluffy, it's got discolorations in there, it almost looks like it's hairy. That would be type 6, and that means something. And then type 7 is liquid, which is obviously diarrhea, right? So those are the 7 types. And this chart here breaks the Bristol stool chart down into what's good or bad. So when you have things like type 1 or type 2, just looking at, if you're a visual, look at this, type 1 and type 2 as it goes into the water here, that means you're constipated. One of the easiest things to get rid of constipation, guys, unless it's a side effect from a medication or you ate too much cheese or something, is actually just drink more water. Water is a simple fix to everything. If you're constipated, drink more water. It will help moisten that up, right? It's all dried out. It comes out dry. Let's moisten it up. It's no longer constipated. Uh, the second section here is your healthy stools. We want you to be type 3 or type 4. We want that to look like a big sausage with some wrinkles in it, or we want it to be smooth like a long sausage or a snake, right? And so this is what healthy poop looks like. And then when you start to getting into your blobs or your really soft or your clumps, which is the 6, the mushy, or your liquid 7 on the end, that's good old diarrhea. We've all experienced that, right? Through food poisoning or simply through just poor health or maybe a side effect of a medication. So a lot of times diarrhea or constipation is caused by your diet, and sometimes it's actually caused by the side effects of the medication you're taking. So, before you go changing medications or trying to find another medication for those side effects, look at what's really going on. Look at your diet, see if it's a supplement issue. Sometimes you're taking too much magnesium and you're getting diarrhea. Sometimes you're taking not enough magnesium and you're getting constipation, right? So the sweet spot is a number 3 and number 4 right through here, right? So that's your poop, right? So when you get a stomach ache, your initial remedy is this. You take an antibiotic. So you think you're sick, you got all kinds of issues, you go to the doctor, they put you on an antibiotic, right? Because the idea is you got some bad bacteria, let's kill that bacteria, fix your stomach issue, your nauseousness, right? Or if it's not something that severe, you just go get you an over-the-counter antacid, Pepto-Bismol, Tums, whatever the thing is these days, and you take an antacid, right, or Pepto-Bismol. Well, when you take these 2 or 3 things, there's good and there's bad. So I mentioned this earlier with antibiotics, the good, the bad, the ugly. So look at if you have gut health, it's bad enough where you're at the doctor and they're giving you an antibiotic, or you're just taking an antibiotic for something else. Look at your gut as a city. Okay, there's there's actually billions of people living in that city, or billions of bacteria, viruses, funguses, and things like that. And so an antibiotic, look at it as if we just dropped a nuclear bomb in your stomach. It wipes out and kills everything, the whole entire population, just destroys it. This is a bomb the city mentality or bomb the city approach, right? So when you take an antibiotic, it kills all the bad bacteria, which we want it to do, but it also kills off the majority of the good bacteria. And remember, 70% of your immune system is in your gut. So if you're taking an antibiotic, you're killing everything off, including the good stuff, and you're severely weakening your immune system. This is why when you get sick, you stay sick. When you start taking medications, you take medications for life, right? Or you're always in the doctor's office every season for a certain period of time, taking more and more medications because you're weakening your immune system because you're destroying 70% of your immune system, which is in your gut. So that's a more of a bomb the city approach when you take an antibiotic. So basically digestive issues, bloating, fungal infections, yeast infections, ladies, because that bacteria, that antibiotic is killing off so much of the good bacteria, it can no longer fight off the fungus and the yeast in there as well. And that's why you get yeast and fungal infections if you have a weakened immune system or after you've been taking antibiotics, ladies. And so more nausea, more sickness, you get the idea, right? So that's antibiotic. I come from the school of instead of taking something that bombs the city, let's take a more desired approach, and we'll talk about that later as we talk about probiotics. So a probiotic is like a targeted strike, if you will, right? You got a bunch of bad bacteria in there. We want to send a good bacteria in there, or like a Trojan horse, get that into your system, the good bacteria, let the spores grow and take over and defeat the enemy from within. So that's a targeted strike, right? That's like sending, instead of sending a bomb that destroys the whole city, let's just send one missile to blow up that bad building, to kill the enemies that way, right? And so that's the difference between taking a probiotic supplement versus taking an antibiotic. Let's just bomb that bad building versus bomb the whole entire city, okay? And we'll get into more details about that later. Next thing, antacid, right? So an antacid basically, or Tums, if you will, simply is something that raises your pH in your gut. So you need an acidic environment, right? The acidic environment in your stomach breaks down the food. When you take an antacid is breaking down the acid. So you get reflux or indigestion, And so you take an antacid to fix the pH in your stomach for you to feel better. But it's actually wreaking havoc on the actual acid your stomach needs to digest the food. So the antacid raises the pH versus keeping it where it needs to be to fight off the invaders and digest the food. And therefore, when you take the antacid, you don't have indigestion anymore because that acid is not bubbling up out of that sphincter in your, remember we talked about it earlier, that the vagus nerve controls. And so it never fixed that valve that was stuck open. That's why you're getting the indigestion to begin with. It simply fixed the pH in there so you don't feel it because it's more alkaline versus acidic, so it no longer burns or you no longer have that indigestion. So that's what, when you take an antacid, that's what it's doing. It's not fixing the sphincter problem that's causing indigestion. It's simply raising the pH. But when it raises the pH, that wreaks havoc on your gut, right? These are the side effects they're just now discovering on antacids. When you take an antacid too long, you no longer can absorb vitamin B. So these people, blood tests have shown that people that take antacids are vitamin B deficient. Why is this important? Well, vitamin B is, remember the gut-brain connection? Studies are showing that with like 90+% of people with dementia, they're all vitamin B deficient, right? So there's this whole generation over the past 20, 30, 40 years of people taking antacids because our diet's so out of control that we're now all vitamin B deficient. And we wonder why dementia is one of the fastest growing mental diseases right now that's, wasn't heard of 30, 40 years ago. Now everybody's developing dementia or all kinds of brain issues, memory loss, right? And it's because of this vitamin B deficiency that I believe, because we've been taking antacids for way too long. And therefore we're vitamin B deficient because what your gut has to be a certain pH level to regulate and absorb the nutrients you eat from your foods or your supplements. And if the pH is too high because of all these antacids we're taking or these antibiotics we're taking that are destroying the good gut bacteria, we can't absorb the vitamin B, and we wonder why dementia is on the rise. So if dementia runs in your family, or you know somebody that's experiencing dementia symptoms, you need to get your gut checked out, and you need to start supplementing vitamin B immediately, right, to slow that process down. And there's a ton of research on this when you get a chance just to look it up, right? Vitamin B deficiency from antacids is causing dementia in our country. Not good. So what's the healthy alternative? We talked about things that we take as everyday Americans. Let's talk about the good things to take to actually get healthy. So foods and supplements, right? So let's talk about that. Then some of the natural solutions to fix gut problems. Apple cider vinegar, guys. Something cheap and as easy as this. Taking a shot of apple cider vinegar does more good for your indigestion in your gut than taking those Tums every day for weeks at a time, right? Apple cider vinegar helps calm that digestive system without destroying your gut lining. It's much safer. It doesn't cause vitamin D deficiency, and it's something you can take as needed. Keep it cold in your fridge. Pop a shot of it. If you don't like the way it tastes, put it in your food. Have your wife cook it in something, whatever, and simply take apple cider vinegar regularly, and that will actually fix a lot of your minor digestive problems. Also, GI replace, which is what we'll talk about later on. This is a probiotic, so taking now there's a ton of probiotics on the market, guys. We'll talk about that in a second, but we take way too many probiotics. We don't take the right ones at the right time, and we're just spending our money for no reason. So we're going to talk about specific probiotics and why and when to take those here shortly. But so GI replace is like a digestive enzyme or probiotics that we'll talk about later. And then the biggest thing you can do that I think everybody should be doing is the advanced plan, right? The advanced plan is a plan that we came up with Max Living that pretty much gets rid of all inflammatory diseases. It helps you lose weight. It helps you feel better, helps with energy levels, helps with mental issues, helps with gut issues. It's called the advanced plan. And we can do a whole workshop on the advanced plan. Stacy, our nutritionist, actually does this in more detail. If you weren't at the workshop, we're giving out handouts where you can scan and get all the advanced plan, the recipes, all the go-to foods in the advanced plan. So if you're watching this at home and you didn't come to the workshop, just call the office. Next time you come in, if you're a patient, we'll give you all this stuff as part of your care. We'll just give it to you. And so you can scan and get all those recipes for the advanced plan or get all the foods on the advanced plan. So it's great, man. It's like 70% fat on this thing. And so you're not starving yourself. You're eating lots of good fats, which is what your body actually needs. And so advanced plans, we've been doing this for 15 years, and there's nothing else out there that we've seen the results like we have seen with the advanced plan. So ask the office more about that, or give us a call, or just get on our website if you need to, mlgreenville.com, and look up the recipes and the nutrition and stuff like that. All right, so that's advanced plan. So proper nutrition for gut health. So let's something that's I think we need to talk about before we get into the good and bad foods is a 7-day food diary. Everybody says they eat healthy until I look at their food diary, or Stacy looks at their food diary. You think I don't eat sugar, doc. I don't eat inflammatory foods. I eat really, really good. I can't figure out why I have all this gut issues or digestive issues or all these different things. But when you put this down on paper for 7 days, everything you eat or you drink, and you bring it into myself or Stacy, our nutritionist, and we go through it, 99% of the time, it's because you're eating the wrong foods. And you think they're the right foods, but they're actually the wrong foods for you. So we encourage you to do a 7-day food diary. Bring it in, let myself or Stacy look at it, our nutritionist. That way we can figure out what you're doing right and what you're doing wrong. All right, so that's the 7-day food diary. So top 5 foods that are destroying your gut. All right, man, that cheeseburger looks good. Bacon cheeseburger too. That's my favorite. Not good to be talking about that doing a gut health workshop. So, anyways, so the number one food that's causing problems with people's gut is gluten. Look at gluten as glue, right? Gluten glue. That's where you remember this. Gluten is simply a protein that it found in nature. It's found in rye, in wheat. That is like it's a protein or a glue that holds things together. All right. So when you think of bread, pasta, all these high gluten foods, they have a shape to them, right? A roll, whatever the case is. Gluten is actually what holds everything together to give it its shape, its form. And that's what gluten is. Now, gluten has been around for, since the beginning of the time, right? There was nothing wrong with it until recently. And this is why people that are gluten intolerant, it's not because you were born that. I mean, you could have been born that way if you have a bad gene from a lifetime or whatever from your parents. But what makes gluten bad for us is this. Think about pastas, breads, starches, all these carbs that we eat in our country, they all come from a bleached flour, right? It's all been bleached and everything's been killed and raped out of it, right? And so that destroys all the proteins in it. So in nature, gluten in whole wheat from the ground, right, or rye, gluten's not going to bother you. But when they take rye or they take whole wheat, they can derive the protein gluten from those two things and make a chemical or a product called gluten. And the reason why industry needs that in today's day and time is because when they make pasta and breads and all these starches, it can't be livable. There can't be any live enzymes or anything in this stuff because there's no shelf life for it, right? So everything that we make our food with, breads and pastas, is all killed, bleached, and starched, right? Really, really bad. So there's no food value left in it. So, but in order to hold it together to make it form the pasta or the breads and things we want, they have to put gluten back in it. So they're putting an artificial or a man-made gluten that they took from rye and whole wheat in nature, combined to make gluten. They're putting it back in our food, and that is why gluten's causing issues today when it didn't 30, 40 years ago before they started making all this artificial food. Does that make sense? And so, eating gluten in the raw or from rye or wheat grown in the ground, this has been altered, is not going to bother you. But when you're eating pastas, which are starchy and from bleached flour or whatnot, they're going to have that bad gluten in them. And that's why gluten is bad for us today when it wasn't 30, 40, 50 years ago. Okay? So that's the thing on gluten. Another thing, damaged fats. Damaged fats are going to be like your vegetable oils. Just because it has the word vegetable in them, it doesn't mean it's good for you. Vegetable oils are actually really bad for you. Your peanut oils, all the things we love to fry foods in that are really, really good, those are your damaged fats, right? And the reason why they're damaged is because when they're heated from fried, they turn rancid. Your body cannot break them down. Your body stores that bad fat, and it's very, very toxic. Okay, so that destroys that gut lining. It helps fast track use of that leaky gut we talked about. It messes up the bacteria, all those different things in your gut. So that's why damaged fats from your oils are really, really bad, or your fried foods. Okay. The third thing is sugar and artificial sweeteners. When it comes to sugar and artificial sweeteners, guys, sugar is actually going to be better for you than artificial sweeteners. You know, I've been saying for 15 years that sugar is the devil, because it is. It's the root of all inflammation, disease, and everything else. But when it comes between sugar and artificial sweeteners are going to be more deadly than actually sugar is, even though sugar is not good itself, because artificial sugar causes inflammation. That's why it's bad for your gut. Artificial sweeteners, which everybody thinks are better for them, actually destroys and alters the good bacteria in your gut, which causes the bad bacteria to overgrow, which causes bloating, which leads to weight gain, which leads to type 2 diabetes, which leads to your doctor saying don't eat sugar, take artificial sweeteners, which leads to insulin belly, because you keep gaining weight when you're type 2 diabetic because you're doing artificial sweeteners, which caused the problem to begin with. So run from artificial sweeteners. If you have to do something, do good old sugar. It's better in the raw because it hasn't been bleached, but because the stuff you see on the screen is white and bleached out, because for shelf life, obviously, and so it causes severe inflammation. So that's my spill when it comes to sugars. Artificial sweeteners are actually worse for you than sugar is. All right. And then the last one I want to talk about, or second to last one, is alcohol. I'm not judging with this, guys. I love to go out with my wife. We have a date night. Been married almost 30 years. We do a date night every single Wednesday night, regardless where we are, what we're doing. It's solid yellow lines. Nobody can replace that date night. And so we do a date night every Wednesday night, and we go out, and I eat a nice steak. She eats a nice piece of salmon, and we drink a couple glasses of wine. That's our thing. And so I'm not judging you if you drink alcohol, but just understand alcohol, especially beer, like you see on the screen here, is very inflammatory. It really wreaks havoc on the bacteria, causes yeast overgrowth from the hops in the beer, affects the fungus overgrowth, and that's what causes lots of bloating, or that beer belly we think of when we see people drinking alcohol all the time. So that really badly destroys the gut lining as well, right? And the last one I want to talk about, as far as foods that affect the gut, before we talk about foods that are good for the gut, is conventional meats. To me, in nature, there's nothing wrong with meat. Meat is actually good for you. It's got your good fats. I mean, I love a big tomahawk, ribeye like you see there on the screen. Like everybody else, I eat steak once or twice a week. I mean, I love red meat. Red meat is not bad for you. It's how they make the red meat and process the red meat in our country. Red meat gets a bad rap, causing heart disease and all these other things, but it's not the meat itself. It's all the bad stuff in our meat that causes inflammation, that causes heart disease, or causes gut health, in the reason for this workshop. A cow, where we get red meat from, if it just grazes on grass its whole life, guess what? That's a good thing. It's got the perfect ratio of fats. It's natural food. But when they fatten a cow up at the end of its life, they say it's grass fed, but then they grass finish it. I mean, then they actually grain finish it. They put all this grain in the cow to fatten it up, or maybe the cow lived off grain its whole life. If it was conventional meat, and therefore when you eat that red meat, it takes like 10 pounds of grain to make 1 pound of red meat. And so when you eat a pound steak, you're eating the residue from 10 pounds of grain over its lifetime, right? And so what makes meat inflammatory and bad for us is all those grains and the antibiotics in the meat from conventional raised meat. So they're sick all the time, so they got to pump antibiotics in them all the time to keep the herd from getting infected. And so you're eating meat that's been fed a lifetime of grain and antibiotics. And so that's what makes red meat, or any type of meat, inflammatory and actually bad for you. So if you're going to eat red meat like I do on a regular basis, eat grass-fed and grass-finished when it comes to meat, okay? As long as it's grass-fed and grass-finished, which you can buy at Costco, Walmart, everywhere else, you just got to spend a couple extra bucks for it. The couple extra bucks you send, don't complain, because it's still cheaper than buying the antacids every single day that are causing the problem. So quit buying antacids, start spending a couple bucks on your steak, and it fixes the problem, and you enjoy a big steak like me every week, right? So those are the foods that cause your gut health issues, common ones. So now let's look at some gut healthy foods. All right. So when it comes to gut healthy foods, big thing, bone broth. All right. If you got gut issues, bone broth has been proven time and time again, help balance that bacteria, get rid of inflammation. Bone broth is pretty simple and easy. You can make your own bone broth by, guess what? Boiling your bones after you eat your meat. Have your bone left over, boil your bones. That's all bone broth is. If you don't want to spend the time and energy boiling your bone broth, What I do personally, Stacey does make bone broth sometimes, but it's time consuming. So what I do personally to get my bone broth is I do a bone broth protein. Everybody takes protein every day. I do a protein supplement every day, but my protein comes from bone broth. And so we do sell that here in the clinic. It is about $10 more than say whey protein or a plant-based protein. But guess what? $10 divided by 30 days, which is a month, that's 30 cents. So for 30 cents a day, I can get my protein and get my bone broth every single day for just 30 more cents a day by eating the bone broth protein versus spending the time and energy making my own bone broth. So that's how I get bone broth into my gut and my system is I simply do a bone broth protein. It's $10 more a month for it, but guess what? It's only 30 cents a day, which to me is well worth it, right? My time. All right, so bone broth. The other good foods are your prebiotic and your probiotic foods. I talked about that earlier. Prebiotics are your fiber from your fruits and vegetables that feed the probiotics or the good bacteria, which are your good bacteria. Good pre and probiotic foods, as I mentioned, are going to be your pickled carrots, pickled okra. I mean, I discovered that at a winery a few years ago, and it was amazing, man. I don't like okra, but pickled okra was amazing. So fermented foods like that, you get your pre and your probiotics with them all at the same time. A good source of probiotics is going to be like your yogurts, kefir, cultures, and things like that. So those are all very good things you can put in your system to help the proper good bacteria that we need to fix the gut, right? So intermittent fasting, when it comes to fixing your gut, I highly recommend this. It gives your gut like a detox break, if you will. So intermittent fasting is simply you're only eating from say 12 o'clock to 6 o'clock or 12 o'clock to 8 o'clock, whatever that is. And then you're taking that other 10, 16, 12 hours, whatever it is, your off time for your gut to detox and not do anything but repair itself. So intermittent fasting is really good for gut health, especially if you're trying to reset everything. Eat in a certain window. Don't eat for a long period of time. I recommend you start in the evening time, go to the next morning or the next afternoon for lunch. That way you're sleeping through half of it, so you're not starving. Don't detox, don't fast during the day. Eat during the day, fast at night. That's my secret, right? So skip breakfast, in other words, and then don't eat dinner past 6 or 7, and then you're good. You're doing like a 12 or 15 or 14-hour fast that way, right? So detox your gut, right? So those are very important. So now let's talk about healing the gut. So we've gone through the foods, what digestive issues were. We've talked about good foods and bad foods. Now let's talk about an actual protocol. If you're somebody with digestive issues, what I'm going to go through the next 10 minutes is actually a protocol from start to finish, what to do, how to take everything to fix your gut in as little as 2 to 3 months at the longest. If you're a severe case, 3 months. Pretty amazing stuff here, right? And so this is the 4 R's to gut healing. If I'm going through too much too fast in this PowerPoint, or the video, stop it, write things down, or call the office or come back in the office on your next visit and we can give you those 4 R's and the bundle and everything else, the information for that. All right. So the first one is remove. The first R is remove. And there's 2 parts to remove. The first thing I want to talk about is GI remove. So GI remove is what you take the first month, and it actually gets rid of all the toxins, parasites, bad bacteria, pathogens, everything. This thing goes in and it destroys all the bad stuff. And GI remove is pretty powerful stuff. So when you take GI remove, I say this is the part A to GI remove, because you just can't take GI remove by itself, because it destroys all that bad stuff, which we want it to do, from the parasites to the pathogens to the bad bacteria, the fungus, the yeast, everything. But when it destroys all the bad stuff, it leaves too much good stuff, if you will, right? So we have to balance the good stuff with the bad stuff. Too many good things is actually bad for you as well, not just too many bad things. So GI remove kills all the bad stuff. That's the part A. But when you take part A, I also want you to take the microbiome support, which is the part B. You take these 2 items together before you do anything else. You take the part A and the part B. So the second part is the microbiome support. Remember, I told you in the beginning, microbiome is the village or the city, if you will, that's got everything in it that's working in cohesion, right? Good or bad, right? And so what the microbiome support is, look at this like the Trojan horse. Remember, the antibiotics kill everything. And I said, take something specific to go in there, get rid of the bad stuff, and then take over from within. That's the targeted attack. This is what microbiome support does. Microbiome support is simply one type of strain of bacteria. You don't need 15 or 20 different strains of bacteria at this point. It does no good to put all these multiple bacteria into your gut when your environment's not conducive to allow them to expand and grow. We simply want to put a Trojan horse, if you will, in there, right? And so this microbiome support is your Trojan horse. Well, there's a battle going on taking the part A. Now we're going to put the Trojan horse in there underlying so he can do his thing when the part A is working, right? And what makes microbiome support so important is it's got a single bacteria, gut bacteria called Saccharomyces boulardii. Okay, I'm going to call it SAC moving forward because it's pretty hard to explain. So, or pretty hard to pronounce. So when you take SAC, the cool thing about SAC is the bacteria or the probiotic, remember it's a probiotic, that's not affected by your gut pH. Remember, we're trying to fix the pH in your gut because you have acid reflux and all these digestive issues, right? And so when you just take a bunch of probiotics, a lot of that bacteria or those probiotics cannot survive because the pH is way off. But SAC bacteria, as we're calling it, it actually can thrive in any environment, regardless if you have high pH or low pH or neutral, right? And it goes in there. It's a spore. And it's not affected by temperature, environment, nothing. That's why it's so important for support. It goes in there. Those spores get in there, and as the part A is destroying everything, part B is in there and it's growing slowly, taking back over. So the good guys are defeating the bad guys from within while they're getting bombed off the side. So that's how the microbiome support works. You have to take A and B together. Therefore, you don't feel sick and nauseated from killing everything too fast. So that's why it's important to take A and B together for the first month. I have a handout on this, which you can request later, but A and B is what you take the first month. You don't take anything else but these two products together for the first month to prep it, right? And then the second month, you take what's called GI repair. Remember we talked about leaky gut, holes in the gut lining, all these things. We have to repair that gut lining. And so what GI repair does, it has a product in there called L-glutamine. And L-glutamine is a protein that repairs holes in your gut lining in muscles. So people that work out all the time take L-glutamine for muscle rebuilding. Well, you have lining muscle and you have a lining, stomach lining, and L-glutamine also fixes those holes and repairs your gut lining or your esophagus and everything else. So taking GI repair the second month is now repairing all the damage left over from the battle, right? We did the battle month 1. Second month, we're taking GI repair to start to replenish start to fix all those holes. So once we repair all those holes in month 2, we then can move on and start replacing everything, and you're actually absorbing it. It's not leaking out because we're taking something to repair it, right? We took the repair month 2. So month 3, we're now taking GI replace. And GI replace is all the digestive enzymes that we need to take to get our guts healing again, to digest properly. Because our pancreas has been so taxed from living a lifetime of whatever bad foods, overworking, exhausted, not regulating your blood sugar, acidity levels all over the place. So we need to assist the pancreas, which is that third part of the 3 organs in the digestive system. So the GI replace is actually all the good digestive enzymes to help your pancreas rehab, get back on its feet, break all that food down as assistance. So you then take GI replace during that second or third month as well. All right. And then once that's happened, we actually want to re-inoculate everything, right? Which is the GI replenish. So now it's okay to take all those probiotics, the 15 billion different probiotics and different strands and all that stuff. This is when we want to take the high dose of probiotics at the end, the last month, because we've won the battle in month 1, we've repaired it in month 2, and now month 3, we're actually putting all the good digestive enzymes back in there, and we're putting all the good probiotics or good bacteria in there. That's why you take a large probiotic or lots of very different variant of probiotics to help with all the different strands. And that's why the fourth R is re-inoculate or replenish that air, if that makes sense. So in a nutshell, those are the 4 R's that you do over a 3-month period. And this is the gut bundle. All right, we have the GI repair, the remove, the replace, replenish, and the microbiome support. And there is a specific protocol to take these when in-house. So if you get this bundle, make sure you get or ask the front desk for that layout so you know what month to take what. And this bundle here, I think when you buy the bundle, together versus individually, it'll save you like $60, which is a lot of money in my book. And so by taking it like this as a bundle instead of month to month to month, buying this bundle, the 3-month supply, you actually save $60, right? And so I think this is around $300, I believe, for this whole entire bundle. So for as little as like $100 something a month, which is, like $3 a day, which is cheaper than the coffee you spend every day that's caused you to get into the problem you're getting at Starbucks. So for like, $3 a day, you can fix your gut in like 3 months. So this is a no-brainer here, right? So that's the 4 R's in the bundle there. So make sure you grab that. So these are your action steps, just finishing up. Get the 4 R's bundle if you haven't already, all right? Or come to the office or call the clinic and ask us more about that. Get the advanced plan. That's the foods we want you to eat once you're repairing and everything. You're going through this journal. And then also do the 7-day journal, guys, because when you do that 7-day journal, it gives us, myself or Stacy, an idea of where you are so we can meet you wherever you are. I don't expect you to do everything healthy and right the first day, the first week, or the first month, or the first 3 months. It's all a journey, right? And that's why we do this journal. And wherever you are, a good place, a bad place, you think you know it all, or you're completely clueless, my doors are always open. We're here to help you. We're here to serve you. We've been doing this for 15 years, and we would love to help you. So 864-254-9915 is our office number if you're seeing this and you're not a patient. Or our website is mlgreenville.com. Go to that website. You can click on it, schedule a time to meet with myself personally or Dr. Alex one-on-one. We would love to help and serve you. So that's it, guys. I try to keep this as short as possible. So until I see you next time, remember, be yourself because everyone else is taken.